Welcome everyone to the fourth panel for today. We're focused on multilingual families stories in Alberta. So we will get started with a quick introduction before we get into the panel discussion. I have here with me, as you can see, various speakers. I'll let them all introduce themselves, and we're still missing one person. We're trying to as she comes on, and her name is Andrea. She'll do her introduction as well. So my name is Avishta. I'll introduce in my mother tongue, which is Mauritian Creole or Creole Mauricien. Allô, m'appelle Avishta. I'm the creator and producer of the Lingua Cultura Experience, and I work at Masterword, a language service provider based in Houston, Texas, as the communications and social impact specialist. All right, so I'll pass it on to the next person to introduce themselves.
My name is Lucero Vargas. Mi nombre es Lucero. I am a speech pathologist and I am a clinical lead at Multilingual Abilities, and I have been working and collaborating with multicultural health brokers since 2003.
Salam and Khushamadid. Mera naam Nahid hai. Urdu meri madri zaban hai. My name is Nahid and I speak Urdu as my mother tongue. I'm an early childhood development consultant at Multicultural Health Brokers, MCHB. And MCHB and Lucero and I are both part of that organization. It's a community-based organization that works with the ethnocultural communities of Edmonton. Thank you.
Buongiorno, mi chiamo April. My name is April. I'm the executive director at ABC Head Start Society.
Xin chào, tên tôi là Jessica Đỗ. My name is Jessica Đỗ. I'm a registered social worker and currently working as a special program coordinator at ABC Head Start.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Catherine Demers. So I'm Catherine Demers. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at the Multilingual Families Lab at the University of Alberta under the supervision of Dr. Andrea McLeod, which we will be getting in our session a little bit later on today.
Well, thank you so much, ladies. All right, so I do want to acknowledge as well that when Andrea comes on, she will also give us a LAD acknowledgement speech. So we'll come back to that afterwards. We were supposed to do it before, but she's the one who's supposed to do it. So we'll get to that shortly. Started the panel now. It's going to take, we're going to try and finish on time. We'll do our best. So we're going to get started with the first question. So the ladies know in which order they're answering. So the first question is, why is the home language important?
Yeah, off with that. At ABC Head Start Society, we work with children and families from all over the world. We have families from 50 different countries this year who speak more than 50 different languages. And what we've learned is that there are social and cultural aspects of why the home language is important. So sense of identity, belonging with your community, being able to make really strong bonds and keep relationships with extended family and community members, and being able to participate in cultural and religious practices too can sometimes depend on staying connected to that language, that home language. We also know that there's cognitive and language aspects involved in brain development. So in research that we've drawn on, it's been proven that children's development benefits when both languages are supported.
So I am going to give just an example of how is important the first language as a speech pathologist. For everyone, even if a child has a diagnosis, it's important to promote, to conserve the mother tongue. In the past, we thought that language were in a different part of the brain. So one side for English, for example, one side for Urdu, etc. But today we know that the languages conserve the same foundation. So that's why I always, when I talk with other professionals and with parents, I put the example of having a plant and wanted to transfer to a big pot. So if we cut the roots, that plant maybe die. So, but if we save those roots, that plant could be bigger and beautiful. So is that the language is important for the family. It doesn't matter the condition, and it's important for the child to learn more languages as well.
I think it's very, for in addition to what April and Lucero pointed out, it's also what we've seen through our work with communities. It's very important for family well-being and mental health for first language to be promoted. And I think we've heard stories many a times where as the children are entering the public sphere, they feel they don't belong, and they don't see the potency of their parents because they speak English with an accent, or sometimes with their broken English, or when their mom and dad do not speak English, they start feeling they don't belong. So I think it's very important that home language, especially multi-ethnic communities, it becomes that shared language. Where the language of love, where they use this common language to talk about what's wonderful in their culture, to pass on the wonderful treasures in their language, and the parents become that transmitter as well.
Thank you. And I support our colleagues from ABC Head Start and Multicultural Health Workers of all supported by research, right? So just to add on to what they said, so the children that do communicate in the language of their home and the language at school, for example, have a higher self-esteem and a stronger sense of identity. That's what we have seen in research. And also we've seen in research that having both languages can lead to greater resiliency. So they have more capacity to negotiate, as well as navigating different resources as well. So all of these advantages, we've seen it, whether it's on the language and cognition side, or it's on the family and community side, they have multiple advantages.
Thank you so much, everyone, for that was just such an interesting conversation, and I'm glad I was able to grab onto the end of it. I'm Andrea McLeod, and I'm also supporting this this panel. Thank you, Avishta, for leading us off. Our next question is thinking about what does advocacy look like for you and the families you serve by your organizations? And I think we're going to start off with our colleagues from the Multicultural Health Brokers. So Lucero.
Maybe Nahid, do you want to start, and then?
Sure, I'll start it off, and then Lucero, you continue. One of the things that we hold very dear to a lot of the work that we do in the community is this concept of cultural wealth. The term was coined by Yoso in 2005, and it talks about how marginalized communities bring knowledge, skills, wisdom, and experiences with them from different parts of the world. And I think in a lot of work that we do, it's to hone this place of strength, what the communities, multicultural communities that bring cultural wealth to their families, to the community itself. So that's one key concept that really inspires our work, and we look at it as a place of strength. The second thing I think is the empowerment of parents from our advocacy side. So recently where we looked at the experiences of ethnoculture communities in Edmonton with the early learning and childcare sector. And what we realized is that parents across the board with young children have deep hopes and aspirations, but also ideas for promoting home language. And I think one of our efforts is to give parents their voice, to let them become a co-contributor with the early learning and childcare sector, but also generally within the community, and bring on those ideas, because parents within themselves have a lot of stories. They have folk stories, they have shared memories. And I think that's where parents become this great champion of promoting home culture. So I think our work is a lot about empowering parents, giving them the voice and letting them come along and become co-contributors of curriculum and pedagogy that builds the home language and makes it fun and engaging for their children in multiple settings.
So just to add what Nahin is saying, is in our practice, we collaborate with the system, with the education system, with the child services, with family and services, and of course with other agencies that are working with the families to understand the importance to support the language and to include the culture and the language into in our case that we are therapists into our practice. Because if we design, for example, a visual support for the family, that it will be in the 2 languages or the 3 languages that the family speak and is is what they use, and they will be able to understand and follow and implement. So that's I think part of our advocacy is to others how to do this practice. That is complex, it's not easy. You really have to plan, and we have to learn together, from the families and with the other specialists in our case.
Great, thank you. I think next up, we'll pass it on and see from ABC Head Start's perspective.
Yes, so for us at ABC Head Start, advocacy looks a little bit different depending on the level of advocacy. We try to act within our capacity on each of these levels at the individual level. So we will provide support for the children and family as a unit. That's including within our programming and at home as well. It's through various ways, representation, including their inputs, translating of material, etc. That's representation of cultural and multilingual multilingualism, and that sense of belonging and sense of community within our program, and incorporate that and bridge that between home and within our programming. And at the organization level, we incorporate activity and training and support for both children and adults, and that including the caregiver and as well as our staff. April, do you want to add on to the organization level?
Yeah, absolutely. So that inclusive programming, we try to, like Jessica was saying, make sure that we have that representation, because there's nothing better than a personal role model to demonstrate for the kids that being multilingual is a superpower, because you can communicate with more people. And I'd love to share a little story. Actually, Katrine and Andrea, their research team, came in to do some work with us 2018, maybe 2019, it was a few years ago. And I sat in on a session where the facilitator was explaining to these 3 and 4-year-olds what it means to be multilingual. And that was the example she used. I can communicate with more people because I can speak more languages. And you just saw the kids who also speak different languages developing this pride in the room, in the moment. She would call them out and say, you speak English and Punjabi, you speak English and German. And they had this pride in it, and it was just so beautiful to see. So I think that advocacy starts with the people you're working with to build up that knowledge of this power that they have by having that communication skill. But then on an organization level, we also have to give our staff the skills and the understanding and knowledge of why it's important, so that they can encourage the learning and they can incorporate it in the room in a meaningful way. We also try to advocate outside the organization. So there's a systemic level to this as well. We try to influence policymakers and funders. We've commissioned a literature review about heritage language learning, and that helped us advocate for support. We're one of the oldest and largest Head Start agencies in Alberta, and so with that comes a responsibility to use whatever resources and access we have to do that research and to share what we learn with the community and with other organizations that might not have the same ability to engage in that kind of work. So that's why we work with the Multilingual Families Lab. And we really hope that by sharing that learning through conferences, events like this, sitting on social committees in the community, that we can get the knowledge out and we can help, elevate and everyone understand why it's important.
Thank you so much. Catherine, would you like to provide some perspectives from the Multilingual Families Lab?
Yes, of course. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Ripple, for discussing the program that we collaborate with ABC Head Start and as well with multicultural health workers. So one of the things that we do for advocacy is collaborating with organizations like yourselves, right, that have the same values and vision as well. Within a bigger lab, the Multilingual Families Lab, what we have a motto in our lab, for example, that on equality, diversity, and inclusivity that we all share amongst members. There's really an effort and also an inclusivity to have multilingual lab members in our lab. So we do create that space and to put their their assets and their knowledge in their home languages to use and see it as an advantage. So we do it with the lab members, so the students we work with and research assistants, the same as we do when we work with families and children as well, right? And so in our research per se, for example, when we write our research articles and we discuss our research, we don't talk and we don't use deficit frameworks. So for example, like English language learners, we always position the families and the children that we do collaborative research with our community organization within, for example, the framework that Naheen mentioned, the Community Cultural Wealth by IOSO 2005, to really see the assets that these families and children bring as being multilingual. So on the lab level and the research level, that is all the other aspect that we contribute as well for advocacy.
Thank you so much. And for this one, I'm going to ask Avishta to share a little bit about her experiences and perspectives from the advocacy at a global or national level.
Thank you. Right. So we've heard a lot about the advocacy work that the language advocates here have done more on a local level, Edmonton or provincial level. So I used to work a little bit with some communities in Edmonton, but then I started working more on a global level and actually got connected through this particular organization that's putting this together, the Language Access Coalition of Canada. And I started doing a lot of advocacy on the global level, trying to connect. One of the things that I do is actually I put on events like this, where we're bringing language advocates and activists together so that we create those multilingual and multicultural spaces for people to be able to share about their projects and their initiatives in relation to languages so that the rest of the world can learn about them. But also it creates an opportunity for collaboration among different organizations in the world. So at the global level, that's the sort of work that I do, just to encourage the use of language in different spaces and outside of the language industry as well. We want to make sure that people in other spaces, in other sectors, are also aware of how their work intersects with language. So this is part of my mission, just making sure that we have those important conversations about language advocacy in different sectors around the world, but also making sure at the same time that we use our languages in those different spaces, but also make sure that the language is preserved and passed on to future generations. So that's a little bit about what I do at the global level. Thanks, Andrea. And I believe I the next question, right? Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the ladies here. So the next question is, what strategies do we use as an organization to help support home languages? So we'll go to multilingual, to Catherine, I guess, and then to ABC, and then to Hasbroker.
Thank you. And I can start us off, and Andrea can add on as well with the Multilingual Families Lab. So what strategies do we use in our lab? So we do have those collaborative projects, right, that we do with those wonderful ladies here, but as well as with a French school board in Edmonton. So we do promote home languages, create the space, right, encourage really having the home languages not only in their homes, or sometimes you can find it in the community, but as well as when they go to preschool, when they go to school, when you go to different community events. So really having that space that's not only right in one, and so it opens doors for children and families to have it elsewhere. So we do integrate home languages into our sessions. So the home languages of the children that participate, with the help of the parents as well when they are participants with it. And sometimes we have research assistants that same languages as the children or as the families. In addition to the help of the parents, we sometimes have volunteers like we did with the multicultural health workers to help support their home languages. But we do make use of other technology, right, to help us up as well. We use dual language books so the children can hear it in their home languages as well as in the majority language, either French or English, when we work with them. And also, as Irful beautifully put the story out there, that we talk a lot about developing their bilingual identity. That are more some concrete strategies that we do. And just to mention a little bit more about our project in the linguistic minority of French that we do in Edmonton. So the children that come to these schools a lot have different home languages as well. And in addition to learning a language that's not spoken by the community, so English is spoken everywhere in Edmonton, but French is only spoken often at their school, and then they're speaking another language in their home, which it might not be right French or English, and most probably isn't. So to really encourage and create that space of those family as well, to really preserve and maintain their home languages, because it helps, having their home languages helps with all the advantages that we've seen, but also helps to build on another language that they'll be learning, right? So it's a little trickier in the sense that you have a couple of other languages to learn. However, with our collaboration, we achieved of integrating those home languages in the classroom as well within that setting. So that was another part of our story. And I'm going to leave it to Andrea if I think she wanted to add on this question as well.
Yeah, really briefly, I think as we're hearing that importance of collaboration and working together, and really as a team of researchers, we realize that we can't do this alone. This is not work that is done just by us over on the university, and really working with communities is so important. And it really helps us learn also about what is happening in the strategies that folks are using, what are concerns or worries, or also, successes that communities are having, and being able to learn from that, share them across communities has been just super rewarding and really helpful. And it really kind of creates this loop where we can bring some expertise to communities, and then they share their expertise, and we're kind of building capacity through that collaboration. So it's, I think, really important to have that collaborative approach and really think about how we're working together to be able to help parents and families and communities really think about transmitting their language and then sustaining it so that children don't just begin their life bilingual, but continue to grow up and become young adults who have that competency, that ability to speak both their languages and those ties, those cultural and linguistic ties that come along with them. So Vishta, were we going to maybe our ABC Head Start team next?
Right, to Jessica now.
All right, thank you. So I will start off with some of the strategies that we use within ABC Head Start, and please feel free to add in anything if I'm missing anything, April. So we strongly believe in evidence-based practice, and we do want to promote like inclusivity within our programming. And thankfully, for over the years, we have been fortunate to work with a lot of wonderful partners, and one of them is the Multifamily Lab at the U of A. And through a lot of those learning, we're able to incorporate a lot of different strategies within our program. Part of them is the learning material that we incorporate within our classroom. At our site, we have books in various different languages. We have visuals, just visual cards for children to use, depending on their level of communication. Sometimes those visual is what helping them to understand the tasks and routine throughout the day. So those cards sometimes would have their home language on them, and we use home language. Our classroom team would at time, depending on the child's level, also learn their home language to use those visual, use those cues inside the classroom with the home language. We have words, songs, activity that incorporate home language inside the classroom, and we also bring them home and bridge that gap with the home education program, where our staff would come in and work with the parents and children at their home within their environment. We also have a chameleon reader. So it's a multilingual reader where we can record books in various languages, where you can touch the pen onto the book, and any staff, even though you don't speak the language, can sit with the child and go through the book with the child using the device. We also provide option for family with interpretation for meetings, IPP, intake meeting, things like that, as well as translation of documentations and communication to ensure that we have informed consent from family, that they understand what is it that they partake into, the development and support that their children are receiving within our program. And part of what Catherine was mentioning earlier, some of the collaborative projects that we've been fortunate to take part in with the U of A is the Dual Language Lab, as well as they have supporting us with develop mandatory training for our staff to incorporate, really understand the value of incorporating home language within programming and how to turn them into practice within the classroom. And they also provide with coaching and mentoring, ongoing coaching and mentoring for our staff as well. They also support us with putting on educational workshop for family, and which is a piece that Nahi talked about earlier. It's for a family to really understanding that is an asset, right? That they are bringing a lot of value in teaching the children their home language. Because we have family that's, we don't want to speak home language at home with my child because then they can't learn English, and that there's that fear. But through research, we have found that's not the case, right? So, and also we have collaboration projects ongoing with the Bantero is one of the Indigenous partner within the city with us to putting on cultural and teaching for staff and children as well. And another piece that we have for projects is the financial literacy workshop that we received funding from one of our corporate partner. So we were able to transcribe and translate the recording of those workshops into Tigrinya to help provide that extra access to information for that population.
And I don't have anything to add. Jessica's got it covered. Thank you.
All right.
So
Thank you.
at
Thank you, Jessica. So the next person is Lucero. Go ahead.
Thank you. So at the co-op and in our practice, of course, we take everything that you have been shared, and many of the strategies are exactly the same or similar. But one thing that I think many of the parents today, they realize that they want to keep the first language and they want to teach it, but it's not easy. Like, it's no, and I will say, it's not a magic strategy. We have to plan, and I help the parents to really plan ahead how they are going to do it, because if no, it's not going to happen. Because still our system, when the children that go to ABC Head Start, or they have the opportunity to have those strategies that support the two languages, but when they go to a regular preschool in another with another district and other agencies, they maybe don't have that opportunity to be enriched with the first language, or to be supported and to feel proud of that. I have an example of, I went to a school in a rural area, children of 5-year-old, and they were ashamed of the mother to go to the school just because mom didn't speak English, right? And they were just a 5-year-old. So, and because the children perceive that information, they feel ashamed, of course, affect their self-esteem, but at the same time, the self-esteem of the family. And if the family haven't have the opportunity to learn about this and to be supported in giving ideas how they can do it, because we understand they want to help the children to learn English, is how the school is, but you need to create, and you need to support those families in creating those strategies, because it doesn't come. And imagine if the child has any diagnosis, like I said before, and it's more difficult and more come many more questions. If it's because it's many myths about that as well. It's because it's a confusion. That's right, my child has difficulties. So because they don't know why it is happening, many of the families decide to stop and don't keep the first language. So we as a professional, we need to be really intentional, and we need to support them and provide different ways or help them to plan, because it depends on the dynamics and the capacity of the family as well. So basic is what we do. And another thing is we have separate, for example, we have brokers, right, that work with the families, but when it's about the specialized services or behavior developmental support or other programs, we have what we call a family coach. Is a person who speaks the language of the community, but at the same time is trained to do strategies, clinical strategies, and he receive permanent training in the two sides, because we want the two voices, the home voice, family voice, and the system, right? We learn together and we practice together. It's not that we are teaching them what to do and how to do it. We need to learn from them, and vice versa. So that's the strategies that we are using in in our programming and work with the communities and families. Okay.
Strategy that's worked in a multi-cultural kit. So the parents built up a basket, and we call it treasure basket in early learning and childcare. Parent built up the basket with a small story in their language, some of the things from home with their names in their home language, and sends it to school. For not only the children to proudly say, this is what it's called, this is what I use it for, whether it's a piece of fabric, a little doll or something, but then other kids in that classroom also enjoy and play and engage with it. So that's a strategy that's worked really well, where you have that home and school partnership happening. Another example is the elders of the community coming together and being the transmitter. So we have, and the best way is doing it through food. So perhaps baking a bread, where they teach how to knead a bread, but alongside sing folk songs, stories, and communicate. And many of our elders in the communities don't speak English. Parents and families have to rely on the home language to understand them, and we don't bring in translators. So I think creating spaces where elders and where grandparents are coming in and teaching not just language, but also transmitting culture along, because of course language is we know language carries wisdom and wealth within itself.
I think that's such a great way to wrap up this question. The thinking about creating those community spaces and working together, and I think also bringing along the idea of we're all learning. So kind of trying to get over that insecurity. Sometimes we feel that, well, I don't master the language, and that's okay. I'm still learning. So coming to a community event where the idea is to perhaps cook together, but also share stories and share the language, that part of that experience is that you'll be asking, how do you say that? Or what is that called? Or asking to hear it again so you can kind of hear all of the sounds in that word that is maybe new to you. So letting those spaces also be learning spaces, right? So that there's not this expectation that you have to have mastered the language to be able to join in. It's really there to share the pleasure of learning a language, because and maybe this is because I love languages, just so rich and so interesting in terms of like the sounds, how you put words together, kind of the nuances between different, right? There's like in French, there's different words for the parts of bread, whereas in English, there's really, it's like the crust or the bread. But in French, there's like some more details there. And how does that reflect the culture? We can think about that as well. But I think that piece of, that working together and really trying to create that bridge between family and school, or family and community, so that we're all, we're working together with that same goal in mind.
Mm-hmm.
I jumped in, but I think we have a few. If there's some questions, and maybe you can, those of you in the audience can either use the chat, or if you want to voice your question, I believe that's an option as well. And if you keep an eye on the chat, we'll also put in a few resources that our teams have developed that we think would be helpful to share with all of you. So keep an eye on the chat as well, but if you have questions, put them in. Oh, this is a great question here from Nicole. So how can schools and educators better support and encourage the use of mother languages in school, or home languages in school? Maybe do you think Jessica or April, do you want to take this on, or maybe Catherine?
I can. So there's so many strategies. It's age of the kids, of course. We work with preschoolers. So Jessica was mentioning that we often we'll have visuals in the classroom, like a core board with words that the children are working on or the routine for the day, so they can see, you know, first we come in, we take off our coats, then maybe we do story time, and then we have playtime and snack and etc. And those images can have, you know, let's say you have 3 children in the room who are multilingual. You can include their languages with the English and the picture. That's one small strategy. And you could scale that up depending on the age of the children, of course. Jessica also mentioned just having visuals in the room that reflect the different languages of the students can just bring that awareness into the room. We do story time in different languages, and we have used technology to help with that because, of course, we don't expect our teachers to speak every language that exists in the classroom. But you can really, technology is amazing now. You can really find stuff on the internet. You can record stuff with your staff. We've done a lot of that we can then use in the classroom lesson plan. I've seen the Multilingual Families Lab do a beautiful activity. They sing a little song, and it has 2 languages, but then they also have the ASL signs to go along with the song. And so it's actually it is in English and French because the sign is the same no matter what language it's in. So then you get to know the word in English and in French, and it's the sign language that becomes the bridge to understanding both. And it's just beautiful. So yeah, I think look on the internet because there's lots of ideas.
Maybe I can add on just to what April wonderfully described as strategies. So there's multiple strategies as she was giving examples. One that we also like to do, I'll talk about 2, is our multilingual hello. So that's for Unicole, like maybe some ways to kind of start in. So we typically research because we work with younger children. So sometimes they don't know themselves how they say hello in their home languages or how to ask. They don't know what the language is, right? Like how to say hello with your mommy or your daddy. And sometimes they also use English to say hello or French, right? So we kind of do a background research of the different ways to say hello, and then we write them up on little clouds or little bubbles, and we have a poster at the front, and then each child by their turn, you know, with the languages that we know that are speaking, we can talk about different ways to say hello. They can put their hello in their home language on the poster, and that like is our poster that we keep in our classroom. So every morning we say hello in the different languages, and that's a way just to learn, integrate different languages in the classroom. And yeah, so that was one strategy that I think I'm gonna leave the space maybe for everyone else who wants to answer other questions.
We have
I just want
to. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, please go ahead.
No, we have been used in one of the projects that we used to have in the schools, activities like sharing games, for example, bring games from different cultures and have a day of using those games, for example, inviting the families, any member of storytelling, and it has been quite success. Or some of the parents volunteer and made some signs, for example, the numbers or the names. And I have seen in some daycares, for example, the stairs has the different names in different languages. And it gives a sense, of course, of supporting languages. Some of the ideas in the school. Mm-hmm.
I was gonna add that's the idea of incorporating home languages into school setting. It's not just targeting that certain group of children. It is about including the whole classroom. That they can partake in that activity. So one of the activities that we had used in the past with one of our Indigenous partner, they would come in and do a song, Old MacDonald, a simple song, Old MacDonald has a farm song. And instead of doing the animal names in English, they use Cree. And then the children will be able to say the animal kind of sounds, and they can associate that name with the sounds. And then we use picture with the Cree name of the animals on it. So even for children that doesn't speak Cree, they can still associate that idea, and they can partake in the activity as well.
Looks like we're almost out of time, but it was wonderful to have all of you here, and we really appreciate this opportunity to take part in the Language Rights Conference, or I guess a conference. And we look forward to, we've shared some resources in the chat, responded to a few of the extra questions. And if I could ask us all to give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your experiences and your insights. Thank you, Avishta, for co-moderating. And thank you to the back behind the scenes team for helping us all.
Good. Thank you. Yeah. Andrea, I wonder, there was still a couple of questions in the chat, and I think we may still have 5 minutes. I wonder if we could
continue on a little bit. Sure.
Okay. Yeah. I was told we had until 1:20, so.
Oh, I was just looking at the top. I had a session ends in.
Gotcha. Let's see. Well, I think the two questions, we can go over them very quickly. Perhaps the other panelists who haven't responded yet, maybe they want to chime in. One of the question was from Mrs. Musharraf Rao. She asked which languages are commonly spoken in Alberta. So that's an easy one. I think anyone on the panel can take that one.
I think maybe the short answer is it depends. It depends on where you're living in Alberta, and so we have definitely different communities that speak kind of across the province. In rural or urban, we see that there's kind of pockets of more areas where certain languages are more widespread in our community. I don't know if, since most of us are situated in Edmonton, if it to some of the, I actually live in a pretty strong francophone community, so I hear French outside of my home. Our kids go to a francophone school, so on entend quand même beaucoup de français autour de nous. We're really lucky, but we also chose specifically, and I don't know if other folks on the panel want to speak to some of the languages that they hear in their local communities.
Quick, since I don't see anyone else jumping. So, oh, sorry, April, go ahead.
I was just going to say some of our top languages spoken at ABC are Somali, Punjabi. We see a lot of Tigrinya and Urdu, and French, and Spanish is becoming more common as well with the people that work with us and that come to our program.
I would also say a lot more use of Spanish in Edmonton. I live in the west area, so for me it's predominantly an Anglophone area, but I do hear a lot of Tagalog whenever you go out in the area. You know, the Filipino community is very strong around here, so I hear a lot of Tagalog, English. I would say not so much French in this area, unfortunately, but some Somali as well. So I would agree with what April shared, and also what you said, Andrea. And I think that's it. Maybe you can do your close off again. Sorry, Andrea.
Well, I think I said my thank you. So thank you so much, everyone. And really enjoyed this chance to hear all of your perspectives. And thank you for everyone for joining in. And wish you a good second half or last part of Language Advocacy Day.
Okay. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Somos una comunidad de traductores voluntarios que se movilizan
para brindarles servicios de traducción, interpretación de manera compasiva y efectiva a inmigrantes, refugiados,
demandeurs d'asile et d'autres personnes qui ont besoin de soutien linguistique.
En cas d'urgence juridică, medicală ou personnelle.
Valorile noastre sunt libertate și democrația lingvistică.
Для людей любой национальности, происхождения и родного языка.
我们认为流动性和得到庇护的权利不应受到语言屏障的阻碍。
정말 서열학도